Namaste. Papa Mari, Papa Mari, Papa Mari, Nipa, Nipa, Mama, Pa Mari, Riga, Gari, Risani, éndarō, mahā-anu, bhāv-ulu, saragu-na, pādam-ulaku, swāntamanu, sarō-ja-munu, samarpaṇ-amu, seyuva, éndarō, mahā-anu, bhāv-ulu.
Namaskaram and Jai Hind, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to episode number 117 on VasanthiMā's channel. This will be on the third caraṇam of éndarō mahā-anu bhāv-ulu, a Pancharatna kriti of Tyaga Brahmam, one of the Trimurtis of Carnatic music, as you're all aware, especially if you've been watching the previous 3 episodes. The first was on the Pallavi and Anupallavi, and then we started off with the caraṇams. This one, the third caraṇam, is actually an exposition of Einstein's very famous formula E is equal to mc squared, dissolving capricious pseudo-identities into dispassionately renewable, uninterrupted power supply networks since eternity. If this seems complicated to you, the explanation that I give shortly will take care of that. Yes, week 4, caraṇam number 3, saragu-na, pādam-ulaku, vantamanu, sarō-ja-munu, samarpaṇ-amu, seyyuvar éndarō, mahā-anu bhāvu. The advaitik insights I will get into right away. Innumerable, éndarō, quantumly fulfilled, mahā-anu, perceptively-experiential seers, bhāv-ulu, encompass and yet transcend all kinds of rapidly saragu-na changing attributes, thus defying any characterization whatsoever as implied in the general and special theories of relativity, having re-identified with ourself and re-cognised their and everyone else's BMIs, that is bodies, minds and intellects too, as highly utilitarian yet fleetingly-tiny toolkits in misleadingly-apparent multiplicity, instability and turbulence, beset with rapidly changing ad hoc assumptions. Such a transcendence of illusion transforms unsteady seekers to steady seers. To their swift yet dynamically stable foundation, pādam-ulaku, we the seekers' BMIs, for long wrongly identified, misunderstood and confused as ourselves, surrender or rather dissolve into non-existence, antam, even as matter and its constituent atoms, anu, with such a genuinely perceived attitude. The filth-generated sarō-ja-munu, BMIs offer the very best of themselves, some arpaṇ-amu, samarpaṇ-amu, in thought, word and action, seyyu, for it's ourself alone which has appeared over the ages, cloaked in and as numerous varendaro, fully satisfied beings, mahā-anu bhāv-ulu, temporarily occupying well-disciplined and maintained BMIs of various shapes, sizes and species. In fact, our self continues to engage in such magic in our own times too, and do so as long as time itself exists as its playfield, sometimes appearing in its dual role as the spatial domain too. Welcome to quantum mechanics and relativistic mechanics simultaneously, that is, the lowest length scales and the fastest and therefore beyond the speed of light too. To summarize today's imposition, exposition and takeaway of the third caraṇam of Tyagayya, Tyagaraja, Sri Tyaga Brahmam's forever immortalized Pancharatna kriti, éndarō mahā-anu bhāv-ulu, it is clarion call to all of us seekers to dissolve the seemingly long but relatively recently assumed pseudo-identifications with our BMI toolkits. Dissolve the identity into what? Well, into the dispassionately renewable, uninterrupted power supply, or rather UPS networks, which have existed since times immemorial and will do so unto eternity too, characterized by their stillness, exuberance, and intoxication. Coming to the events where I live, vis-à-vis episode 117's relativistic dynamics. From the classification tech day, Ganatantra Divas, demonstrating our nation's upskills in forward and upward mobility symbolically via 50 flight pasts for becoming a republic in 1950, all the way to 23 tableaux in 2023, depicting our rich cultural heritage, rapid economic progress, and robust internal and external security, rooted to the ground and yet rolling down the path of duty, Kartavya Path, last week to Ratha Saptami, just a couple of days later that weekend, was indeed a natural transit on the proverbial chariot, an occasion for the annual car festival at many ancient temples of Bharat, including the Bhūnila Sameta Chennaraya Swami Mandiras Ratha at Varturu, my residential locality known as Varapuri in ancient times. Talking of Puri, yes, in the vicinity of and in close proximity to our home, we have many appropriately consecrated energetic spots or deva sthanas, reflective of course of our own dynamic Kundalini Shakti transit points, infinite similes, small yet infinitely densely packed, befitting their nomenclature as chakras despite being subtle points. Chakras, as you know, are wheels of progressive evolution. The most prominent amongst such consecrations around our home is the one dedicated to our BMI's five-pronged elemental sustenance of solid, liquid, energy, gas, space-time, the Panchabhutas, a spectrum ranging all the way from the grossest soil, Bhu, to the subtlest sky, Nila, all of which are well balanced and integrated together, Sama-ita Sameta, to empower none other than our own well-being, Channa, and mastery, Raya, over I am, Swa-ami, Swami, an epithet of ourselves, omnipresence, Vishnu, celebrated in one of its many manifestations as the solar energy, Surya, which is humanity's Nara, source, and destiny, Ayana to Narayana, Surya Narayana. This Bhūnila Sameta Chennaraya Swami temple's major annual Ratha Yatra draws lots of devotees from far and wide. Every Ratha Saptam dedicated to Ratha, Karna's dad, following a couple of Brahma Muhurtas later by the Varapuri Draupadi Sameta Dharmaraya Swami Devastara Vanya Kula Kshatriya Digalara Karaga, commemorating the annihilating victory over our BMI's Sub-Muladhara dark lethargy, Timirasura, that is all the Thala chakras all the way to Pathala, none other than our own self's primordial power, Adi Shakti, of dark energy in its manifestation as a swift and fiery pursuit, Draupadi, regenerating its own youthful vigor, Veera Kumaras, during the night, intervening Madhva Navami and Sant Shri Tukaram Anugraha Dashami Harivasa. VasanthiMā and I feel very humbled and blessed that both the Ratha and the Karaga, as well as many Pallakis and Vahana Sameta Utsava Murtis, pass by our home with a scheduled long stop right in front of us. As we live at a road turning, I have participated in harnessing this Ratha and other associated week-long festivities whenever I have had the golden opportunity to be within the country, Bharat. This annual combo festive event is of course predated by the Puri Jagannatha Ratha Yatra and the Namma Bengaluru Tigalarapete Karaga. History remained unbroken in holy Puri under curfew even during the COVID pandemic as the juggernaut rolled on. As is the wont of a juggernaut, it defy anything, leave alone teeny-weeny corona. Dance on. Well, it's siblings' day out, actually a week out, of course, without their spouses to tango, the repercussions of which are evident within 3 days. The etymologically inclined amongst us might know that the English word juggernaut, referring to any entity which is massive, unstoppable, and crushing all obstacles, is directly derived from one of ourselves' many names, namely Jagannath of Puri, Odisha, whose unstoppable annual chariot ride, Ratha Yatra, is typically attended by more than 1 million devotees or bhaktas physically and crores virtually via live telecasts. Supreme Self, being the Lord of the entire existence, Jagannath leaves on the first morning of the week-long festivities for its annual 3-kilometer joyride on a chariot named the Declaration of the Foremost Bull, Nandi Ghosha, lent of course by its own sibling-in-law, none other than our own nothingness. Ironically, to escape from its spouse, a traditional euphemism for one's own powerhouse. The short and playful outing is for a full week's stay at ourselves, otherwise empty garden house, Gundicha, fragrant with the smell of hot topsoil just wetted by the first monsoon shower. The house, Gundicha temple, is indicative of our fertile heart, emptied from materialistic thoughts. It is thus thoroughly cleansed to make it suitable for the stay of ourself, the emperor of existence. So is the entire path for journey, yatra, kings, our PID controller, and commoners, our 10 sensors and actuators, vying with each other to wield the broom in the service of the BMI's supreme master, ourself. Those of our robotic constituents who are waiting for their turn to contribute to the external and internal cleanliness drive, Bhitar Bahar Swachh Abhiyan, dance their hearts out in the tradition popularized by the 15th century pinnacle of devotion, Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, an avatar of our jet black attractivity, Krishna, born with its singing and dancing prowess intact. At this time, in contrasting golden hue of its beloved, flowing back upstream to its source, Radha. And in this context, you should understand Neela Devi as well, because typically Lakshmi is shown as golden, just like Radha, whereas Neela Devi is shown as dark, just like her spouse, Krishna or Vishnu. The reason is that being in close proximity, she starts reflecting his own color as a mirror, and that's what becomes her color, and that's something which is much more endearing and of closer nature than her own golden color. And here, when we are talking of he and she, we are talking of ourself and its energy, just putting it in a dialectical fashion just to make it more spicy. That's what Sanatana Dharma is all about. A very, very spicy way of putting the ultimate truths. Interesting contrasts make it easier to remember and incorporate. At the end of the day, all colors constitute only a negligible part of the entire electromagnetic spectrum, and so is the range of sounds that humans hear, approximately 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz. Having mastered materialism, we ourselves, that is Jagannath, are accompanied on this round trip by two of our auspicious co-borns, symbolizing our own inner strength Balabhadra and inner pleasantry Subhadra, and our inner weapon of visionary clarity of perception Sudarshan, each with their own chariots for the 288th consecutive year, though its origin goes even further back in history to the Puranic times of these siblings, flesh and blood, 5,200 plus years ago. An epithet of our self's desire for all as a magnetic black hole, Krishna, Sri Jagannath, along with our inherently auspicious strength and pleasantry, Balarama and Subhadra, are uniquely reconsecrated with Neemut once in a wisdom cycle, that's once in 12 years. And Neem, as you know, is anti many of the germs and therefore so very significant. And repainted once in a soulful cycle, that is once in 12 months. Once in 12 years, it's remade with Neemut, and once in 12 months, it is repainted in this powerful temple that I had the privilege to be called to serve and witness 8 years ago. Even as I recount it for you, goosebumps herald those vivid memories of life-enhancing energies. Over the millennia, many more such Ratha Yatras have become regular features across Odisha in particular and Bharat in general, being called, for example, Jatre in Kannada and Ter in Tamil. More recently, this has been replicated all over the world by Srila Prabhupada's ISKCON, rendering yeoman devotional service to the Supreme Self, that is ourself, inhabiting every BMI, not only human, and what I simply refer to as ourself, sick, because purposely coining a grammatically incorrect but spiritually experiential word. In all our videos, as well as the Katham.in spiritual blogs, you'll find this reference to ourselves. This unique tradition of Ratha Yatras nowadays going all around the world, which itself is tirelessly and perpetually rotating and revolving, and of course precessing, because of which the concept of Ayanamsha is there, differentiating the sidereal zodiac from the tropical zodiac, is significant in many more ways than one. For starters, consider relative motion. When we are in a stationary train, looking out of the window and watch a moving train on a parallel track, we experience the illusion of our train moving in the opposite direction. Similar is our daily experience of the sun rising in the east and setting in the west, and thus making us feel it is going around the earth. Astronomers and commoners alike in Bharat knew millennia before the 16th century Polish Copernicus of the heliocentric nature of our solar system, as evident in multiple Vedic references. Yet for a devotee's BMI toolkit, which bases its entire life on subjective experiences, Ptolemy's 2nd century geocentric model wasn't all that wrong after all, as long as we are on a planet. Even even if it is Saturn. It is just a point of view from an observer fixed reference frame, essentially a matter of perception, like in my earlier example of the two trains in relative motion. So are you part of your reference frame? Are you separate from it? That makes the difference. The apparent path of the sun around us is called the ecliptic, similar to the highly eccentric reversible lanes of the Puri main road called Vadadanda, connecting the main Jagannath temple to the Gundicha temple and back. This is also similar to the closed cycle of the four Mad streets to the north, east, south, and west around most large ancient temples used for their festive processions. Our Varapuri home, Puri, I'm stressing on that, our Varapuri home is, for example, on the southern Mad street facing the north at the Ratha's Agni Mula. No wonder then that delicious prasadam gets cooked here. So while the devotee does frequent clockwise circumambulations, pradakshina of his deity every day, he has absolutely no qualms in also letting the festive form of his deity, Utsavamurti or Uchchavar, go around himself, his house and streets on a streetcar or chariot ratha. When you go around your true self and let your true self go around you, that is a lovely dance move. Keep it going on and on. That's what life is all about. More in detail next month when we celebrate one and only ultimate sky robe king of dance, unhesitatingly displaying life's secret of nothingness. I just can't wait to write on that. A fortnight to go for MSR, as it has now become popular thanks to Sadhguru Mahashivaratri. In fact, as a live event, it was watched by a world record number of 14 crore times, much more than any Grammy or sporting event in the US. Our Varapuri Ratha, whose visuals from this year you have been seeing in the sidelines of this video, obviously dwindles or rather dwarfs in scale compared to the Odisha Puri Jagannath, more than makes up with its own utter simplicity, the enormity of its backdrop, and the antiquity in its association with someone older than the so-called creator. Yes, I'm referring to ourselves as the creator of the creator, based on experiential realization, which is also the very basis of Sanatana Dharma. A lifestyle of genuine seeking rather than the blind belief systems that all so-called religions have been propagating with feverish propaganda. Though the concept of ratha happens to be mentioned in the Vedanta, in particular the Kathopanishad, I have only an infinitesimal exposure to our infinite scriptures. Most of what is delivered during my discourses like this one and typeset in my blogs on Katham, however, is purely from an inner inspiration experienced during my daily sadhana, which is not for a fixed time of a day, but throughout the day, rather than any bookish knowledge or hearsay. For instance, in my previous levels of evolution, I used to perceive Jagannath as the Paramatma, the Supreme Self, his main temple as the universe, and the Rath itself as my breath or prana. The empty Gundicha temple was then perceived as me, the Jivatma, thus differentiating the two, Jivatma and Paramatma. That was a dinēś of the Easter years. First inhalation that I took when I was born in this lifetime was thus a journey from the universal Paramatma in the main Jagannath temple to the individual Jivatma in the Gundicha temple, my empty shell. Last exhalation at my passing away from the body currently housing me would be the return journey of the Ratha or Prana from Gundicha to the main temple, which is the universe. The fact that Jagannath stays in Gundicha only for one of the 52 weeks every year showcased to me then how fleeting my life was and how long it might be before I reincarnate, if at all I have to. Hence, my dire need to fully utilize this short span of precious time available in the best possible way to evolve further and inspire everyone around me too. The people who clear the path and pull the ratha or prana in and out almost involuntarily are my karma indriyas or karmendriyas, the 5 actuators in healthy collaboration with my 5 jnana indriya or jnanendriyas, the 5 sensors, while the royals engaged in the same seva are my mano, buddhi, ahankara, the robotic PID controller, proportional integro differential controller. Most people unfortunately translate and understand ahankara as ego rather than the temporary identities that our BMI ought to take up in undertaking various tasks. In fact, in my current perception, there is no such thing as ego. He was the bad fall guy we had merely conjured up in our imagination just to shift all the blame onto him for our own BMI's fallacies. Our imagination was so strong that we ourselves then started believing it as an existential truth. Poor guy didn't even exist, and this was thus a surefire way to unwittingly and yet willingly fool ourselves. As an individual, we are actually indivisible. Else, we are either schizophrenic or possessed, needing help from either a psychiatrist or exorcist, respectively. Only we just wake up and recognize our absolute responsibility for everything, everybody, and every situation in our life. Then we will never ever play this blame game by imagining a non-existent ghost ego. However, being still embodied in my PID controller, I continue to utilize a P equal to proportional gain, which is my ahamkara. As I mentioned earlier, most people translate this as ego, hence causing the confusion. In reality, ahamkara is merely the set of various temporary identities that need to take up, preferably in full awareness, to conduct our daily business in interacting with the world around us, be it family, friends, colleagues, or society, or even larger gatherings. My ahamkara is thus like the roles played by an actor who is always inherently conscious that he isn't one of those characters that he is playing. But having been an enthusiastic part of live theater for quite a while, almost 3 decades, myself, I am aware there are many crazy actors who start fantasizing about actually being the characters that they play, even beyond the play. Such over-enthusiastic actors are some of our best teachers who teach us how not to be. A few years ago, Ratha Yatra was thus a two-way flow of breath, which even for me was a ground reality at that stage. Now that I have managed to fully evolve further, I experience it as imaginary too, because it is also temporary, while truth has to be everlasting by its very definition. Right now, it would be mere theoretical knowledge as far as most sadhaks are concerned. Pranayama or pranayama plays a critical role in their daily sadhana, and they can't yet conjure up that the rath or breath is their kalpana or imagination. Many village simpletons aren't aware of why they are pulling the ratha, yet doing it enthusiastically. That is the beauty of the amazing rituals devised in our Sanatana Dharma. It just doesn't matter why we do something as long as we do it with full involvement and dedication. It still works. It is like how if you sow a seed without knowing what will happen after that, and it's a fertile ground and there's good monsoon, it might grow up into a plant sprouting well and eventually probably even a tree. It's also like how gravity worked even well before our boy Isaac Newton, that is, discovered it. It is also like how digestion of food occurs even for those who haven't studied biology, anatomy, or physiology. Most of our rituals are basically aligned to the natural laws and thus work automatically, like our bodily involuntary systems. Some of us, as scientists, intellectuals, and researchers, of course, would like to understand why these rituals work, and we may even be able to explain a few of them with our limited intellects. But real proof of the pudding is in eating it, as holistic experiencers or mahā-anu bhāv-ulu with their anubhava do. YouTube called it good news, as more people were choosing to watch VasanthiMā's previous video. At every timestamp since its premiere last Thursday, the second charanam had in fact overtaken the first one by a sizable margin. We are now hoping that you will all ensure that every nth charanam would do the same to the n-1th charanam. So second charanam beat the record of the first. Now it's in your hands to make this third charanam beat the record of the second, and eventually go on to reset her all-time record for the most viewed video, beating even the dually publicized E85, episode number 85, which was Behen's Bhajans, Ramanavami, Beckons Urgampet Sisters, Aka Ram Lakhan, Prem Mudit Manase Kaho, and Atma Rama by Sri Anup Jalotaji and Sri Satyasai Baba, which was supported and advertised and marketed by Jaggima, VasanthiMā's sister, own and only sister. Thanks to all of you for sharing VasanthiMā's videos amongst all your contacts. Please continue to promote them amongst every network that you have access to. Thanks once again. However, we have had only a couple of comments on the YouTube page for the latest video. Many of you have, of course, commented via WhatsApp, but kindly do so on YouTube too. Thanks in advance. Budget Eve FEO Dhamaka, caretaking and share taking despite short selling hawks all around, and post-budget Sharanagati of even a successfully oversubscribed FPO to protect investors from the market carnage indicates passion for compassion and dispassion for impassion. Yes, passion for compassion and dispassion for impassion. Like a lotus, all of which are the themes of today's Charanam 3, as you already heard it from VasanthiMā and me, the Advaitik Insights, that is. You will be able to buy what Chennai Express's Meena Deepika Padukone dubbed as Hitler and Shah Rukh Khan, that is Rahul's Bakwas Ki Dictionary, in Mahabharat's Bhishma store since 5,185 25 years as Jaya Bhishma Ekadashi heralded yet another happy fortnightly 42-hour fasting and wakefulness upavasa jagaran for me earlier this week. Indeed, nothing is impossible as long as our resolve is strong enough to be termed as a sankalpa. Our identification is with ourself rather than with our body, mind, intellect, BMI toolkit, or any other temporary role plays that we are involved with in life, at work, home, society, nation, or the world. Clearly understand the current bounds of our BMI toolkit, intelligently take care of it, upskill or enhance it as required for the task at hand, and efficiently utilize it in the ops towards our resolve. Spiritual truths aren't necessarily popular amongst BMIs bombarded with sensually gratifying entertainment day in and day out on demand. Yet you guys are exceptional to help VasanthiMā pull it off. Make it a habit of breaking her own records, rather your own records, week after week. Her latest, rather your latest, now the fastest to 1.5k, 1,500 views in 5 days and 20 hours. But her fledgling channel will always require your continued likes, comments, shares, and subscriptions. Jai Bhim, breathing with a smile of satisfaction on Bhimasena's birthday yesterday. It was a further evolved form of pranayama from VasanthiMā's previous episode and Bhimasena's previous yuga's stilled monkey mind of Hanuman with culinary skills as a bonus takeaway. Continue breathing that way with sattvic diet through a 3-day countdown to Sunday's Thaipusam, also known as Bharata Hunnime in Karnataka and Dhanya Purnima in many parts of India, as an inspiration, both literally and figuratively, for rest of the fleeting yet jolly good lifetime of your current BMI. Further stilled our BMI toolkit, leveraging the magnanimous opportunity provided during yesterday evening's Maha-pradosham in the wisdom of Guruvara and the unfathomable compassion of Ardra Nakshatra to witness and dissolve into the ultimate dance of ourselves nothingness with Mahashivaratri MSR exactly a fortnight ahead. Jai Bhim! Yesterday's Bhishma Dvadashi gave way to the future generation in the form of Bhima Jayanti, the day Bhishma chose to discard his then aging BMI on a bed of arrows thanks to Arjuna, also happened to be the day that a few years earlier Bhima had chosen to get a fresh new one, courtesy of our energetic life breath Vayu, our fragrant matrix Kunti, and perceptively powerful reinforcement Maharishi Durvasa in a hot pressure cooker, the dharmic autoclave, resulting in a specifically strong composite persona. Yes, it is we and we alone who choose when, where, and to whom we are born, based entirely on our previous karmic asset liability balance sheet. Parents are but mere facilitators in the process, and so are guardians, caretakers, teachers, et al. As co-passengers in this wonderful journey, nay, yatra of life, for which we need a vehicle. And what better than a Bhima Ratha called BMI? In fact, there are many birthdays pertinent to all of us which are named either after Bhima and or Ratha. For example, the launch day celebrations of our BMI's 55th revolution around our solar system's only star is termed as Bhima Śānti, 60th Ugra Ratha Śānti, the 70th Bhima Ratha Śānti, and most interestingly, when one is 77 years, 7 months, 7 days old, it is called Vijaya Ratha Śānti, and I'm hoping to celebrate that for VasanthiMā in 4.5 years approximately from now. More precisely, on the Karnataka Rajyotsava Day, Rajya Utsava Day of 2027 exactly, if we are both still around, of course, and delivering videos for y'all. Amongst all these Shantis, I was already lucky and privileged enough to host the 70th birthday's Bhima Ratha Śānti of my dad, whom I used to fondly address as Pappāji Master. That event was celebrated in a befittingly grand manner with an overnight stay at a temple dedicated to the Aradhya Ishta Devata of one of the greatest devotees ever, Bhima, ISKCON Bengaluru. Jai Shri Krishna. Do check out a sample set of pictures from that event right here with the huge placard, and in front of it standing are my Chittappa Shekhar, myself, my mother, mother and father, daughter, and of course posing in front of the temple is the couple whom we were celebrating that day. Yeah, I'm still lingering in the Ratha Saptami mood, and why not? Because I'm privileged to live on a street through which an ancient and massive Ratha passes by every year, reminding me of my own fleeting BMI's significance, even for the short duration that it exists, occupying negligible space and yet houses the one and only omnipresent eternity, ourself. Yours spiritually, Professor DH, and weekly dose of vitamin D here and now. Signing off and looking forward to meeting y'all within 7 days in E117, episode number 118, in week 5, charanam number 4. Patita Pavanudane Parat పరుని గురించి పరమార్థమగు నిజ మార్గముతోను వాడుచును సల్లాపముతో స్వరలయాది రాగముల తెలియువారెందరో మహానుభావులు. నమస్కారం. జై
भारत माता की जय. हर हर महादेव.